So the company secretary is the person who is going to guide the business, take it forward for the smooth functioning. Institute of Company Secretaries in India can be appointed as a company secretary. You are talking about supervision. The other side, you are talking about control. So monitoring as well as having the checkpoint. So that's where the company secretary comes in. He combines both the knowledge. Good morning and welcome to the third session of Unit 4 in Company Law, and we are going to speak about the rights and duties of the company secretary. Now, the company secretary is the most powerful person inside the company because he is going to decide the internal affairs of the company. He holds the rights for conducting the meeting, and he is the person who is going to judge the company affairs. Now, moving forward, let's first try to understand the role of a company secretary. Now, the duties of a company secretary play an important role in the company because the company secretary law commands the smooth functioning administration process of the business environment. So the company secretary is the person who is going to guide the business, take it forward for the smooth functioning. Now, if you look from an internal perspective, it's the company secretary who signs on the appointment letter of the CEO. He is the person who is going to sign on the letters of the board of directors. He is going to be the person who's even going to have a say in the election of the chairman. And when it comes to the annual general meeting, when it comes to the annual report, all these functions have to be get with an approval of the company secretary. It has to be made very, very clear that unless and until he approves on the meeting, he approves for all the details, the meeting will not proceed further. He makes the minutes of the meeting. He commands over each and every decision that is being made by the company. So that's why company secretary is the most powerful role that you can ever think about inside an organization. Now, as it's a top qualification of the company secretary in the country, the responsibilities and roles are very complicated, need to channelize the attempt to be displayed in phased manner. Look at the sentence itself. It is a top position, it is very, very complicated, and you need to understand it in a phased-wise manner. Company secretary's role cannot be just spoken in one line or in one word saying that he is the person who's going to run the organization. But he is a person who holds the secrets of the organization. The company secretary commands the respect of being the guardian of the company in terms of holding all the key documents, all the key meetings, and every single approval in terms of running the organization. So the qualification, the nature, the stature of the position, the way how he delivers the activities, the way how he looks over the various departments of the organization are all very, very important. That is why his role and responsibility might not be apparently flashy, might not be coming out every time on a newspaper or on a media, but without his permission, the organization cannot run smoothly. So that's why the role of company secretary is very, very powerful altogether. Followed by, after the Companies Act of 2013, the role of company secretary in India has become very, very important. No doubt about it. Because the role of company secretary after the 2013 Companies Act, it has become more important. Why? Because every public sector organization, every public company has started understanding that we need a key person who's going to guide us, who's going to take the responsibility of channelizing the entire company and taking it forward. So there is also a significant requirement and position of the company secretaries. Under the Act of Companies Act 2013, it's been clearly mentioned what kind of factors the company secretary has to follow in terms of guiding the organization. Now, the appointment of the company secretary. Now, who is going to appoint this most powerful person? Who is going to take the responsibility of bringing in the company secretary to the organization? Now, it starts like this. A person who is the member of ICSI, Institute of Company Secretaries in India, can be appointed as a company secretary. Every listed company in India must have it appointed as a company secretary. They need to have one person who is to be nominated as the company secretary, who has to be selected. Now, every unlisted company, private company having a paid up capital of 5 crore and more must have a full-time company secretary. A CS is not allowed to hold office in more than one company at any given point of time. Company secretary cannot be a part-time role and he cannot keep hopping from office to office. He needs to hold a full-time position in one organization only, followed by, in case of default in complying above the provision, he shall be fined up to 5 lakh rupees. So look at the power. It's not just about the money, but it is not the factor that just hopping is allowed, or if you just try to move away from the law, you are going to be fined. At the same time, you might be removed out of your duties. So that's why the role of company secretary is highly important as we are talking. The first thing that you need to start arranging yourself to get a company secretary is that call for a board meeting only after giving the notice to every director besides other matters. So you need to call for a board meeting and tell all the board of directors clearly as why we have joined here in terms of appointing a company secretary. Now, approve the terms and conditions at which the company secretary is proposed to be appointed. What are the terms and conditions under which a company secretary is to be appointed? What are the terms and conditions under which this company secretary need to take it forward altogether? Obtain a written consent from the person who is appointed as a company secretary. So you need to get a written consent saying that hereby I would take over as whatever the designated factor, the company secretary, in so on terms and conditions. Followed by inform the stock exchange with which the shares of the company are listed on date of this meeting before the board meeting. So you have to list it out clearly saying that this is the function, these are the functionalities. So I am listing it out altogether. Followed by inform the stock exchange within 15 minutes of the board meeting the outcome of the letter or by fax. File the relevant directorate form, that is DIR 12, connected with the ROC within 30 days to the registrar of companies from the appointment. Pay the request fees, make the necessary entries. The whole time company secretary indicates the company secretary will now become the integral part in terms of employment of the company. Now look at the steps itself. This is not a kind of appointment, or this is not a kind of role which you would see in other sectors, in other organization or other kind of roles altogether. Why? Because today, let's say that you are applying for the role of a manager, applying for the role of a vice president, or applying for the role of a general manager in a company. You might not have to see so much of formalities. You might not have to see these kind of factors altogether. But then for a company secretary, you have to go through all these things because they would be asking you 101 questions before appointing a concerned person as a company secretary. So each and every step has to be followed, it has to be notified, it has to be brought into the presence of the registrar of company with the approval, and the date has to be finalized, an approval has to be taken, and then the appointment of the company secretary with the due remuneration and every other facts have to be published. Followed by the roles and responsibilities of a company secretary. Now, what are the roles and responsibilities? Meetings of the board of directors, the general meetings, memorandums and articles of association, requirements of the stock exchange, the statutory registers, statistical books, statutory returns, reports and accounts, registration of shares, communication of to and from the shareholder, issues of share capital restructuring, acquisition, disposal and mergers, corporate governance, common seal of the company. Look at the responsibility of the company secretary. It is one big list that is going to encompass the entire organization into the hands of one single person. So starting from meetings of the board of director, anytime there is a meeting that's going to happen, including the board of directors, this is going to be a very, very important function. Why? Because the minutes of the meeting have to be recorded. The minutes of the company, whatever they have been told, whatever they have to be carried, has to be mentioned. The general meetings, that has to be told across. What are all the general meetings, why it is going through in that phase, what are all we have done, all those factors have to be registered. Memorandum and articles of association. What are the memorandum? What is the article of association? How does it talk about it? What are all the different factors? Has to be mentioned here. Requirements of the stock exchange. What are the requirements of the stock exchange? Because, for example, there are some notifications coming in from SEBI, from NSE, from BSE. The circulars have to be passed. They have to be read. They have to be approved. All those things will come from the company secretary. The statutory registers. The registers, including the membership register, the shareholders, about the board of directors, the whole-time directors, all those statutory registers have to be held by this company secretary. The statistical books which talk about the records of the company in terms of the quantitative functions. The statutory returns, the reports and the accounts, registration of shares, return of money, communication to the shareholder, issue, acquisition of any company, mergers, all those details has to be maintained by the company secretary. Now, what happens here is that he is one person who is going to hold the authority over each and every activity. Now, for example, recently there was an acquisition that was made by Infosys, known as Simplus. That's the name of the company, which they had taken over for a data communication company altogether, and they had to go about in terms of an acquisition there. So, moment Infosys makes an acquisition worth about $250 million, they had made a recent acquisition altogether. Now, the acquisition that was made by them was immediately notified altogether. Similarly, tomorrow, some other company, let's say that they go in for an acquisition, they want to buy out certain processes. They want to take over certain processes. Automatically, what happens here is that a notification has to go in stating that this company is trying to buy out this factor. Now, recently, there might be a buyout by the Adani Group towards DHFL. So, moment Adani Group acquires DHFL, the acquisition, the value, the shares, all those factors have to be given by the company secretary to the public. So, that's where I would always say that the corporate governance, the acquisition, the mergers, the style of operating, the details of the company has to be given by the company secretary. Moving forward, the powers and rights of the company. Supervision and control. As the head of the office, a company secretary has the rights to supervise, direct, control all the activities of subordinate office. He has the signing authority. Being a principal officer, a company secretary can sign contracts on a company meeting, file the documents on behalf of the company. Now, the first thing is that the supervision and control. There are two different factors here. One side, supervision means you are overseeing the activities of the company. You are going to monitor each and every activity of the company. That is supervision. Control, where you are going to have necessary checkpoints over each and every activity of the company. So now you look at the differential factors here. One side, you are talking about supervision. The other side, you are talking about control. So monitoring as well as having the checkpoint. So that's where the company secretary comes in. He combines both the knowledge. Followed by signing authority. The company has got a principal nodal officer known as the company secretary, who will have the rights to sign on the file, who will have the rights to sign on all the meetings, recordings and other factors. He will also have an exercising power altogether. He has the right to apply the power as authorized by the board of directors. He has the power to issue the testimonial. A company secretary can issue testimonials to employees on behalf of the company. Absolutely, yes, he has the rights to do that. claiming the salary and damages as per the contract. He has the right to claim his salary and other allowances. He can also take a legal action against the company if there is a breach of contract. Now look at it. For other people in the organization, salary is a work that has been, it's been given as a compensation factor because of the work that is being done. But for the company secretary, he will have a right over his own salary where he can demand from the company at any given point of time. And in case if the company did not give his salary, in case if the company did not give the allowances, he can file a lawsuit against the company itself. Followed by the preferential creditor. Now, during the winding up of the company, a company secretary can claim his legal dues like a preferential creditor. Yes, he can do this, where he can go forward and say that he can be a person where he can go forward and do a preferential creditor, which means to say that in case when there is going to be a winding up, any settlements, company secretary will be the first person to take in charge. Attending the meeting, be it a board meeting, be it an annual general meeting, an extraordinary general meeting, or any other class meeting, it is the right and responsibility of the company secretary to be present and to understand the meeting, make notes about the meeting, and take it forward in the way it has to be presented. So I would always say that without the existence of the company secretary, you will not be able to conduct any meeting. You will not be able to take any approvals or any decisions at all. Now, the restrictions on the powers and rights of company secretary. Distribution and transfer of shares. A company secretary cannot distribute or transfer any share which has been the authorization, if is not being authorized by the board of directors. So for a company secretary, you cannot just take the shares and transfer it, or you cannot just authorize shares on behalf of the company. It is being done by a separate factor. It has to be legalized only when the board of directors say that he is authorized, unless and until he cannot take over this power. Company agent. Now, company secretary cannot attend any meeting as a company agent without the consent of the board of directors. So the board of directors have to approve that yes, on the behalf of the company, you can go and attend meetings. Then only he can go forward and attend. He requires authority from board to sign any contract on behalf of the company. So when you want to go forward and sign any contract, then you have to get this permission altogether. Taking of loan. A company secretary cannot take loan in the name of the company. If he does so, the company will not be liable to pay such loan back. So now the company secretary, since he has got the power, since he is representing the company, he is the whole and sole authority. He cannot take loan on behalf of the company. Any loans taken are like his personal loans. He shall not drag the name of the company for his personal rights and responsibilities. All he can do is that if he is taking a loan, he is responsible for the repayment. Company will not take any responsibilities for that. With this, I come to the conclusion of this session. I hope and believe that this session was highly informative, useful, and of a great resource to you. In the upcoming session, we will be talking about the different kinds of meeting that happens in a company, and as per the company law, what is the impact of this meeting, what is the importance of this meeting altogether. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me on this wonderful session.